functional safety. Most of my experience has been in new product development and software. But in the last 10 years, I've also had a lot of experience at the systems level. Just check one more question. Okay. I'll do my best to speak directly into the microphone. Today, we're going to talk about the CFSE program. I am proud to say that I was one of the initiators of the CFSE program approximately 15 years ago. And in that time, the CFSE program has grown in quantity and prestige. I work for a company called Exida. Exida has locations around the world. Exida does a lot of different activities, all focused on automation, reliability, and safety. We have a certification program, which is the world's leading product certification program for the process industries. And as part of that, of course, we do professional certifications for individuals, which is the CFSE program. Exida has published a lot of industry references, and I'll be talking about some of these in particular later on in this web seminar. I always like to think, where did this come from and how does this relate to our safety? I view the 61511 and the 61508 functional safety standards as having two fundamental concepts. A detailed engineering process, often called the safety lifecycle, which helps us prevent design mistakes, what the standard calls systematic faults. The other fundamental concept is probabilistic performance-based system design, intended to give us sufficient protection against random failures. The CFSE program is part of the concept of the safety lifecycle, and of course, competency is an important protection against design mistakes. The safety lifecycle is a series of steps defined to help us prevent mistakes. The safety lifecycle defines the documentation required for any project. A safety lifecycle needs to be audited to make sure the process is being followed. And lastly, if you can't really see it on this slide, but there is a concept of functional safety management verification, where a company must check to see that you're not only following the process, but the people doing their work are competent to do their work. Now, who says they have to be competent? How competent must they be? Well, there are sentences in both IEC 61508 and in 61511. You can read them, and when I read them, I think, well, that's common sense, that's logical, but it doesn't say much. How do I interpret this? How do I follow it? Obviously, the standard doesn't say, so I can only tell you how Exida has interpreted and what we do. We follow a program where we list all the different safety lifecycle tasks that we perform. In other words, we want different competency requirements for each task. We don't want everybody to have the same set of competency. That doesn't make sense to me because the tasks are different and they require different levels of skill and competency. Now, for each task we've defined, we define the competency. We write down what we expect each person doing this task to know. We define the judgment criteria. And what I mean by that is, how do we show that someone meets the requirement? And lastly, we document it. Documentation is an important part of the safety life cycle. Besides, if you didn't know, Exida gets audited by American National Standards Institute. We must document and verify competency because it's part of our accreditation. Now, everybody should do this. And I'll tell you, when I first started this, a number of people at Exida, including myself, felt, oh, this is way too much work. Isn't there a simpler, easier way? But we sat down and followed this, and I'll tell you, I went through a staff of over 40 people in 2 days and did a very, it wasn't that hard. In fact, I'm just shocked at how easy it was to do a good job. Let me give you an example. We have a 2-level, basic and senior. So you'll see that for this particular task, hazard identification and process HAZOP for end user facilities, that's a task in the safety lifecycle. And so you can see we've listed the basic requirements, and you'll note that we want even the basic people to have a CFSP or a CFSE. For senior, we have some more stringent requirements. We most certainly use the CFSP and the CFSE program as part of our requirements, but I do not mean to imply that having a staff with CFSP or CFSE alone is enough. It's not enough. And that's partly why the endorsement program exists. Now, what is the CFSE program? The CFSE program was established. You can see Exida is using it. So what is it? It's established to improve the skills and formally establish competency of those engaged in the practice of safety system applications. We wanted an independent, really test-based mechanism to help demonstrate competency of our people. And many companies are now asking for CFSEs to be part of the group who does or at least verifies the safety work for their particular companies. The program was established in 2000. It's operated per an international standard for how to operate a personnel certification program, ISO 17024. There are 2 levels. The CFSP is the first level. Generally, that's considered somewhat entry level, but fully competent for basic tasks. And CFSE, the Certified Functional Safety Expert, is a general expert level. Now, I'd like you to note that word general, because there are questions on the exam about the entire safety life cycle. So someone must have a good, deep, expert level knowledge in the safety life cycle as a whole. The endorsement program is new. It offers electives in specific safety life cycle tasks to show more advanced knowledge. Don't see any questions yet, but go ahead. Last time I gave this, someone said, "No, hold it, stop. If I have a certified functional safety expert and I have passed that exam, does not that mean that I am an expert in every task of the safety life cycle?" Good question. Well, as a matter of fact, expert means different things to different people, but I do recall when I was first called an expert, and I thought, that sounds pretty nice. Then I realized I was not reading articles and I was not keeping up to date. Fortunately, I realized that pretty quickly, and I started continuing to study. And I love it, and I continue to study to this day in further attempts to go ahead and demonstrate competency. So I think CFSE is an excellent foundation and an excellent general demonstration of expert level, but it is not deep enough. You can see in the Exida competency requirements, we certainly require more than a CFSE to do senior level tasks? So the answer is, yes, CFSE uses the word expert, but it's very general. The endorsement program allows people to show even more depth of knowledge in specific areas. So what is this endorsement program? It's a set of additional exams, a more detailed examination of specific areas of the safety life cycle. So someone can show more than just CFSE. And quite frankly, at Exida and in many of our client companies, they wanted something more. Many of the CFSEs have complained over the years that although the CFSE program is clearly considered the highest competency demonstration in the world, and if you attended the seminar last week, you could see the detailed comparison between different programs on the market. Only the CFSE program is operated per ISO 17024 with impartiality, double-blind exams, independent graders, and all the things that make a program credible. But although CFSE was highly credible and the best, it was too general. The program did not provide a way to show more in-depth knowledge. And thus, at great effort, quite frankly, the endorsement program was created. Now, who should participate? I did want to say that. And as I explain the exam, you might challenge that it's too easy. Well, we wanted it easy to take the exam. It's not necessarily easy to pass the exam. And the questions, in my opinion, are advanced. But anyone who already has a CFSE or a CFSP are eligible to participate in the endorsement program. Candidates need to master a new skill, need to develop in-depth knowledge of a particular field of functional safety. And there are many different kinds of people who have taken the exam so far. And we might talk about what are these exams. Now, take a look at these subject areas. And you can see they are very specific. And I will tell you that functional safety management was the #1 request. There are a number of people who wanted a CFSP with a functional safety management endorsement because they weren't going to be doing the detailed calculations and the detailed SIL selection, and they weren't going to be doing proof test planning or operational maintenance planning. They were the auditors, the people who are most interested in quality of the safety life cycle. You can see we go through the entire safety life cycle, starting from process hazard analysis down through SIF design and SIL verification, safety requirement specifications, application software. That's an area where many, many people, quite frankly, fail a 61511 audit when they are done by Exida. I'm talking about, your ladder logic. There are pretty significant requirements for application-level software testing and documentation, even in 61511. And I'm not talking about 08. Even in 11, go look. I think that's 61511. I think it's clause 11, but I have to look that up to be sure. There's a section on proof test planning because I've seen a lot of people who are very interested in that. Factory acceptance testing, commissioning and validation, maintenance data analysis. It probably should be data collection and analysis, alarm management, and even cybersecurity. Some of the newer subjects that weren't even in the original exams. So there's a lot of different subjects, and there's an opportunity to get approximately 15 different endorsements if one wanted to. Most people go for about 6 or 8. How's it work? You sign up. It's a computer program. It's an application on the internet. There's a direct link from the CFSE.org website. You sign up, you pay a fee, and you're given a chance to take the multiple choice exam at any time, 24 hours a day, online. Once you start, the exam must be completed within 2 hours. I've never tried to see what happened when a timeout occurs, but I imagine it scores what you've completed. You must score 80% of the questions correctly. Grading is done automatically and immediately online, and your score is immediately reported to you. And to me, that was a big deal because nobody wants to wait around. I mean, the CFSE Advisory Board has worked hard to tell us to speed up the grading, but sometimes we have to ship the exams around the world and double blind and secret, and to follow the strict requirements of ISO 17024, it does take some time. But not on the endorsement exams. You can take the endorsement exam and get your score immediately, which I think is a real positive. Let's double check here. Okay, no more questions. Don't hesitate to ask, by the way. For example, a lot of buzz in the market about control system cybersecurity. And many of you who took the CFSE exams probably took them before there were any control system cybersecurity questions on the exam. So one of the things about the endorsement program is it allows you to demonstrate that you're more up to date. Anyway, the keys are you must understand the differences between IT security and control system security. The IT people have different rules and different modes, way of doing things that is not necessarily good for a control system. You need to understand the differences. So there are questions about that. You need to describe how cybersecurity practices and principles can be applied to safety instrumented systems. Because remember, cybersecurity attack could, if successful, could disable a safety instrumented system, in effect causing it to fail dangerously. You have to know how to evaluate cybersecurity risk, and you have to define key considerations for creating a secure safety instrumented system architecture. Control system cybersecurity is an important part of the safety lifecycle. Although the older version of 61511, which is in use today from 2003, does not speak of cybersecurity. Everybody knows, though, that it's important, and that's why it's part of the endorsement program. All right, well, how do you learn this stuff? Well, the bottom line is there are many resources out there for you. There are particularly a set of web seminars that have been created, delivered, and recorded and are available free of charge from Exida. I've pointed out the ones that I think are most relevant to the exam, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All of these web seminars are less than an hour. Worst case, 5 hours. I believe if you go through these 5 web seminars and you read these 2 white papers, you would be able to pass the CFSE endorsement, control system, cybersecurity endorsement exam. So I don't necessarily believe it's a lot of preparation time, but for many of us experts, you don't forget, you really do have to keep on studying. And that's a lot of what the endorsement program is all about. Here's another example. SIL verification. Now, the SIL verification focuses on some of the newer concepts from the latest version of 61508 and some of the things that are coming in the new version of 61511. That's why there's always an up-to-date dimension to the endorsement program. You need to understand how architecture constraints. What are architecture constraints, and when do they apply? You really must understand the term SIL capability and how that applies to SIL verification. You have to demonstrate the ability to calculate simple PFH and PFD average for a set of equipment. although that's been in the CFSE exam all along. There's a few questions there. Describe sources of failure rate data and know all about and understand machine safety versus low demand process safety, thoroughly understanding cycle test data and the relevance of that. Now, how do you learn that stuff? The bottom line is there's a lot of resources available. Web seminars that are pre-recorded, they're available on both YouTube and the exida website. But I've counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 very relevant web seminars. Although, yeah, that's 8 hours, and I sat through some, including the ones I gave, but just to check to see that they were okay. I am convinced that if you sit through these web seminars and you understand the material, you will pass the SIL verification endorsement exam. If you want to go a little deeper, look at the exida and ISA books. In particular, there is a book that exida publishes on final elements. Chapter 4, Chapter 5, and Chapter 6 are very relevant to the SIL verification endorsement exam. And in the ISA book, Control System Safety Evaluation and Reliability, Chapter 15 is directly related to the SIF verification exam. I did want to give you the chapter number, so I didn't necessarily tell you to read the whole book, but resources are available. If you're concerned about passing, if you feel you must pass the exam on the first pass, it can be done. There are no special courses out there, although a number of organizations are preparing them. I'm not convinced you need to pay anybody to take a course. All of these resources are available free of charge. Here's another example. Safety integrity level target selection and layer of protection analysis, LOPA. For this exam, you need to understand common SIL target selection techniques. Now, they've been around for a long time, but a lot of the LOPA stuff has developed in more recent years. You will need to calculate the frequency of an incident using quantitative LOPA techniques. In other words, there's at least one question on that subject. You need to show how LOPA can be used to complement other SIL target selection techniques. You need to demonstrate the ability to estimate probability of failure for a layer of protection. And if I had to give you a clue, I would talk about alarms and human layers of protection. That's a big part of LOPA. I mean, I've seen a lot of LOPAs where an awful lot of credit was given to human beings, and some of that is questionable, at least in my opinion. And lastly, you have to calculate required risk reduction using quantitative tolerable risk criteria methods. All right, that sounds pretty challenging. Well, how do you make sure? How do you develop a strong confidence that you would pass the SIL target selection LOPA endorsement exam? There are, again, substantial number of resources available. In recorded web seminars, 3 of these are right on target. I wouldn't call it cheating to go look at these, but I know that most of these cover the subjects on the exam pretty closely. So I do recommend them. I'm not sure if these 3 web seminars alone would be enough, but if you get a copy of the Practical SIL Target Selection book, there's a wealth of information in there. Most of the chapters in this book, of course, are relevant to 1 or more CFSE endorsement exams, and you will find that the examples in this book are very similar to the questions on the endorsement exam. So I hope you're getting a picture of what this is about. It's specific, detailed task, like SIL target selection and LOPA. There's 40 questions on this subject, not the typical 5 or 10 that you might get in a CFSE exam. So obviously this is more in-depth. The endorsement exam is more focused on more recent developments. So in many ways, it's a way to update your CFSE to show that you haven't become obsolete. And lastly, if you're like me, it's a way to give you more incentive to study. I enjoy studying, but sometimes I just need a little kick in the butt, as we say in America. A little extra incentive is good, and learning and thoroughly understanding one particular subject is something that I enjoy, and I hope you do as well. Make sure I got that right. Okay. If anybody has any questions, please type them up. If you want to go check out the endorsement program, please go to the CFSE.org website. There's a whole section. You can go ahead and click on each particular subject area, and the detailed subject for every single endorsement exam, the knowledge areas are defined, so you can study and get ready for the exam. There's also a lot of information available on the exida.com website, and of course on the exida.com website you can order books or download lots of the free educational material that's available. The recorded web seminars are available both on the Exida website and youtube.com Exida LLC channel. Anybody have any other questions? Well, I'm pleased to report that the battery backup system here, our main power is out, but the battery backup is working fine, and we made it through the web seminar. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to send an email to the administrator at cfse.org, to myself, Goble at exida.com, or if you have any questions about the various training options from Exida, please send an email to clindy at exida.com. Okay. We've got some more questions. Thank you very much for typing them in, because I wanted to take advantage here of this opportunity. Do you get to know what questions were incorrect? What's the fee to retake if you did not pass the first time? Do the endorsements expire? Good questions. Oh my goodness. I assume that the endorsement exams are based on the 2004 version of 61511. When will they be updated for the 2014 version? All right, let's go through this. Right now, you do not get to know which questions you got wrong. Main reason for that is if the question came up and showed you one wrong answer of the multiple choice, then you could cross that off and you would increase your chances of getting the question right without even knowing the subject matter. And many of the rules in ISO 17024 would prohibit such a thing. It is possible, as we enhance the software, to give you clues about what area you need to study, but that's not been done yet. What's the fee to retake the exam if you did not pass the first time? I do not know. I will have to ask that. But if you send me an email, I'll make sure you get an answer to that. Do the endorsements expire like CFSE does? And the answer is no. There is no endorsement. In general, the requirements to renew the CFSE every 3 years, of course, still exist. And the endorsements just go along with the CFSE renewal. I assume the endorsement exams are based on the 2004 version of 61511. The answer is yes. And, of course, there is subject material that isn't specifically covered in 61511, like one of the examples we discussed. Because 61511, in general, doesn't have the level of detail. When might they be updated for the 2014 upcoming version? The answer is within 6 months of actual passage of whatever year it might be. And we don't know that for sure yet. I remember hearing about the 2007 version of 61508, the 2008 version, the 2009 version, and it was finally released in 2010. So based on my experience with international standards, I want to be very careful. I would be very careful about predicting dates and when a new one will pass, and the bottom line is as soon as it passes, we begin updating. More questions, and I thank you very much. Is the Safety Lifecycle poster available as PDF file? Boy, that's a good question. I do not know. I would think that would be an excellent idea. I will have to go ask, and if I discover it's not available, I will make sure we suggest that to the exida marketing people, because we definitely would like to get the safety life cycle information out to everyone. Well, that's it for now. I thank you all. I apologize if this took too short a period of time, but I think sometimes that's a good idea. Take a look at the CFSE.org website. Think about the endorsement exam. And we will, and good luck. Thank you all. Take care.